who is 2 years old. And she has a lot to say about a variety of policies, mostly about chocolate for breakfast and the weaning process. She'd really like to continue with the boob, but that is difficult these days. So let me go ahead and share screen. I will put up this PowerPoint. And hit the share button. Quick, this is, let me move all this out of the way. There we go. All right, so this is, not sure if we can move that one. Hang on one second.
No, you're all good. No, you're all good.
That one up there. And the
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll shut that down. Okay,
Thanks.
go ahead.
All right, so go back one.
We should get a picture of this.
Okay, so here's the title slide and our 3 distinguished guests today. Paul Klein, Sarah Adler, Elliot Mullen, all fellow lobbyists. And I like to think that all lobbyists are actually UUs, because who else would show up at 9 a.m. on a Sunday to talk policy and advocating but a UU? So really, they just don't know it yet.
Hey, I am a Methodist.
That's true.
But that's all right.
We accept Methodists, all kinds.
That sounds all good.
So I'm here in church as an atheist, and they love me here. So I'm also a lobbyist, and you haven't complained yet. A quick lay of the land. I have some notes and corrections from our November presentation. I went through and watched myself. I caught my own BS. I thought I should let you know the parts that
Honest lobbyist.
I try. Philip, I'm taking my cues from you to be impeccable with my words
Thank you.
and like to give corrections. Following that, I'll talk a little bit about where we are right now, what's changed since our last presentation in November. I'm going to give one quick slide on UUFNM strategy, just to get you all started, get us all started thinking that way. It's broad enough to get us started, but it's not enough. And then a resource page with some in-depth trainings. And then we're going to move right into our guest speakers on the 3 proposed policies that align with UUFNM values. And I'm going to do all this while holding a 2-year-old. So apologies for that being out of breath. All right, so from 11/19/22, since then we have hired Hannah Fahmy, who just became a member at UUFNM. She's our legislative intern for the upcoming session. And we have hired Elise Monroy Marsalis, and now we are a 5-member team of just total awesome people. I also last time said that there were 2 states that have biennial sessions. It's 4, and it's Montana, Nevada, North Dakota, and Texas. I say that the right to lobby, that my job is protected by the Constitution, which is my husband's least favorite thing that I say about my job. It's actually in the Bill of Rights, so I gotta correct that. The right to petition your government. I did assign homework, and that was to look up your representatives. Anybody? Awesome, yay, good. All right, so next steps will be to talk to them. And there was a question last time from Adina, who asked a question about, if you're a state employee, can you still speak at the legislature? Are there any prohibitions on that? And I gave a very lobbyist answer. I said, well, probably not. You just need to let your superiors know. And then I followed up with an actual attorney who specializes in this area of state worker rights. And he said my answer was pretty good, so I take that as a win. And he also added that if you are a state employee, just make sure you're not using any state facilities or resources. So don't write emails to your legislator on your work computer, or drive the Medicaid vehicle to the legislature unless you're actually representing Medicaid. But if you're doing it all on your own time with your own resources, that is fine and you are protected. Okay. This, if you recall from last time, is Nevada's legislative process. Last time we spoke, we were here in the initial steps phase, which is the idea and drafting phase. Anybody want to take a guess where we are now with 2 weeks to go to session?
Same place.
Same place. Surprise. with a little had 138 bills introduced. I believe Sarah Adler actually has a bill number that she can talk about with actual legislative language behind it, which is very exciting. But the rest of the process will not happen until February 6th. That's when we'll really get started. And it will be 120 days of chaos and slight madness. So just a little bit of strategy to start thinking about at the UUFNN. I did put on here that it might be time for one of our favorite things as UUs to potentially form a committee to start talking about legislative advocacy. So we can talk about lobbying as the UU, going in and speaking on behalf of the UUFNN. And right now, the folks who do that, that's probably Karen, Nathan, maybe the president of the board, but figuring out who has that authority to speak as the UUFNN versus who's speaking just as themselves. We can talk a little bit about registering as lobbyists. There are some pros and cons to that. If you can register for free if you are a veteran, a non-paid veteran from the military. It's $20. If you're just representing yourself, that covers the cost of a badge. Let me know if anybody wants to register as a lobbyist, and I will walk you through that. Later on, we can talk a little bit about forming coalitions. I was checking out the lobbyist registration page, and there is a Lutheran education and advocacy group that has a registered lobbyist for Nevada. And that could be a potential area where we could form a coalition between the UUs and the Lutherans. Some other ideas to look into are, do we want to lobby on an individual bill and identify maybe 10 high priority bills? Or are we more interested in sitting in, for example, the health committee or the education committee? Oh, thank you. Thanks, Annie. Charlotte's helping. She really wants to get into the proposed legislation discussion. That's probably her favorite.
So we're going to talk about chocolate for breakfast.
Yeah, chocolate for breakfast, which she did have today. So we do expect around 1,200 bills to come out. No one can become an expert on all 1,200. That just, it could never work. But there will be some high priority bills, and I have our 3 guests here today to talk about potential legislation in areas of interest to UUs. And those would be high impact bills, high impact pieces of legislation where coming in as an individual and or as representing the UUFNN could make that difference in getting that bill passed. The other option is, getting into a committee and maybe having somebody sitting in the committee on judiciary every single day. Somebody in the yellow side with love sweater in the committee on judiciary or the committee on healthcare or even the budget committee. And how impactful would that be to just have your presence there every day, side with love, every day, every committee. There's power in presence. There's also advocacy days coming up. So if you're interested in public health or libraries, parks, you want a piece of chocolate? No, can I hold you? We can talk about those, get them on the calendar. And those are just days to come down where you can meet other folks who are interested in those topics. Library Day is one of my favorites. I also really appreciate Ranching Day. They bring a fake cow that you can milk. So if you've never milked a cow, multicultural days, there's a religious day. So it's a really great opportunity to explore what else is happening in Nevada and other interest groups and just get a feel for what folks are talking about. Can we hold, you're waving. If we can hold all questions till the end, I know there's going to be a lot of questions for our distinguished guests. And then finally, I want to mention that relationships are important, building relationships with your legislator, with the legislator who represents the UUFNN, with representatives from state agencies, from schools in the area, with hospitals, with lobbyists, and building those relationships now and in the interim after sessions so that we can lay this foundation for a strong UUF&N presence in 2025. And in 2023, this will be kind of we'll see how it goes, we'll figure it out. And in 2025, maybe we can put some of these ideas into action. We'll get that committee together and we'll figure out some ideas, huh? Okay. This slide, I'll make sure it's available. These are some in-depth trainings coming or that have just happened. Sandra Cosgrove, she's spoken to our group before. She just had a citizen legislative advocacy workshop where she walked everyone through how to use the tracking website through the Nevada legislative website. That is so valuable if you are interested in specific pieces of legislation, is to know when it's going to be heard, what the next action is, and when you need to show up, right? Or write a letter or make a phone call. And then there's also this Teach to Testify. This is Senator Dina Neal here. One of my icons personally, her knowledge of the revenue cycle in Nevada and all things taxation is just astonishing. So Wednesday at 6 p.m. on Zoom, if you want to learn how to testify from Senator Neal. All right, bring me Minnie. I'm going to pass this over to our three guests. First on the list is Elliot, and he is going to be talking about expanding state recognized holidays. That was the one I came up with. He does not have slides, so what I'm going to do is stop sharing screen, and I will do some baby magic, and Elliot will take it away for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So Elliot Mallon, I'm with Alpine Strategies, which is a government affairs political consulting firm here in Northern Nevada. Some priorities that I have coming up this session, and just a little background on these before I get into them, is I represent the Anti-Defamation League here in Nevada. And so we like to focus on anti-hate legislation, anti-hate opportunity. This last session, a little bit more background, we passed a Holocaust and other genocide education bill, which included other genocides such as the Armenian genocide, Guatemalan, Cambodian, and part of that was, although I come from the Jewish community, we also recognize that genocide is genocide, and genocide is all bad, and we never want to play what's called genocide Olympics. I'm not going to weigh that against somebody else's tragedy, and we want to make sure that students are taught what happened to different people and why. And so that was really important to us this last session. This upcoming session, we have two bills that are high priorities for us. One we are calling the Mezuzah bill, because again, coming from the Jewish community. And what this bill does is it's intended for residents in HOAs, in common interest communities, that where there is something within their bylaws that says you can't hang a mezuzah, for example, or any other religious item, whatever that religion is, that we're going to now stop that practice. And we're going to make sure that members of our community can represent themselves as they wish, that their background tells them. And so that's bill number one. Bill number two is a little bit more on the expansion of state recognized holidays. Specifically right now, we're focusing on the school districts. So growing up, I grew up in Southern Nevada, and students who were Jewish or not of a major Christian sect had holidays during the school year. Well, those holidays, those absences, where we're mandated by our beliefs to be in temple, for example, are counted as absences, which is a highly problematic issue when we have drawings for students in their senior year where they get a free car if they never miss a day of school. Mm-hmm. Now, Leah was talking about the First Amendment, which, by the way, Bill of Rights is Constitution.
Yeah, right.
It is.
It is.
It is definitely the Constitution. Those are constitutional rights. But when we're talking about the First Amendment, we're talking about government-funded schools and government-funded institutions that we're now causing a weird segregation, right? And that isn't okay. Now, this isn't done on purpose, and we're not trying to attack the schools by any means. And we've actually approached the school districts And so far, every district is on board with what we're trying to accomplish. But the issue is underlying that we were having students being marked as absent for practicing their faith, for being present where they were required to be present by their faith. And that's not okay. And so it goes beyond that as well. We actually had an incident here in Washoe County a year and a half ago, where a student was absent for Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day in Judaism. And the school said, that's not excused. That can't be an excused absence. Not only is that against the law already, but they're also wrong. And so we're trying to stop this practice from happening or affecting other students. And again, it's not just Jewish students. The Catholics have Ash Wednesday as an example. The Mormon community has holidays during the school year as well. And so we want to make sure that all religions, even the Wiccan, they have observances during the year, from solstice to what have you. And we don't find it appropriate to have students in a way, again, segregated. They're being separated from those of the major faiths and being punished for that to continue. And so we are going to be changing that, where an absence for religious observance, and whatever that religious observance is, it's not my place to say, is recognized as that religious observance. It's no longer going to be recognized as an absence with the school districts. So it's going to be withdrawn from that side of the system. Now, the students will be required to still do the work. It will be treated as if it was an excused absence for the student. But on the back end side of it for the schools, they won't be marked absent. It will be a different marking and a different recording. So that way they're not punished. And there's a few other reasons for that as well. We have truancy laws. And so we want to make sure that students aren't being looked at as truant either,
Right.
because they are practicing their faith. And so we are going after this in a holistic way. We are trying to approach every ally possible, because while we often do, as I mentioned, we have a mezuzah bill, and that stems from Jews not being able to affix a mezuzah to the doorpost, which is required by our religion. But it's, again, not just about us. And so this is an opportunity for us to fight for everybody. And that's kind of what we're aiming to do. I know that's not 10 minutes, and I'm sure I could drown on about this for a very long time, but then I'd be walking into circles. But this is something that we're passionate about this upcoming session. This session for us is our opportunity to focus on the greater Nevada community, and doing everything we can to bring others to the table and show, hey, we've done things on anti-Semitism, but today, this year, we want to focus on Nevada and bringing all communities together and fighting for all communities, because that's what the Anti-Defamation League exists to do. While we were founded as an organization to fight anti-Semitism, we find ourselves that it's more important to fight hate together, because when we combat hate together, we can combat it against everybody, and we can build friends and allies in that process. And nobody deserves to be subject to bigotry or hate. So we're really looking forward to this session, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Elliot. We will have time for questions at the end. I am going to turn it over now to Mr. Paul Klein to talk with us about death with dignity coming in Nevada. Paul, are you ready?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. Leah, thanks for inviting me to come speak to the group. It's also great to be presenting with both Sarah and Elliot, who have both helped and supported our team on this specific issue in previous sessions. So it's great to see them. I'm going to share screen.
There's some movies.
Starting. Okay, can you all see this? Okay, so I'm presenting this legislation, end of life options. Again, my name is Paul Klein. I'm with a government relations public affairs firm called Tri Strategies. End of Life Options Act. You may also know it by death with dignity, medical aid in dying. There's a few terms out there for it, but the act itself is becoming known as the End of Life Options Act, or ELO. here's what it is. It's basically a terminally ill adult patient with a prognosis of 6 months or less to live and suffering from an incurable disease may obtain a doctor's prescription for medicine they may voluntarily take to peacefully and compassionately end their life. Little bit of the criteria. This is a very detailed bill. There's a lot of safeguards in here to prevent any type of misuse of the law. But here, the main highlights is you have to have a confirmed terminal illness with a prognosis of 6 months or less to live. You have to be an adult, 18. You have to be mentally capable of making an informed decision, and you have to be able to self-administer. So just, okay, we'll go on this page here. Sorry. I skipped ahead a little bit, but just listen to a minute, I'll catch us up. Age or disability doesn't qualify. So a patient can be a quadriplegic, and in some people's view, they would say, well, that person doesn't have a high quality of life. They are healthy. They do not qualify for this law. A patient can have ALS, for example, and at the time be qualified for this prescription. But if their disease debilitates them to the point where they can't self-administer, they don't qualify. You have to be able to take the medication yourself. You have to have the terminal illness determined by a provider. There are multiple requests in this law. You have to have 2 verbal requests. You have to have a written request. You have to witness in the room. That can't be a family member. Coercion is a felony. Life insurance or any type of insurance must be honored. Doctors, providers have full immunity. And anybody along the chain of this process, from a doctor to the hospital to the pharmacist, if they don't feel comfortable in the process, they don't have to participate. The law is currently authorized in these states, and Oregon, Montana, Vermont, California, New Jersey, Washington, DC, Hawaii, Maine, and Mexico. Oregon, it has been legal since '95. And if you're familiar at all with the Brittany Maynard story, that's what really brought a lot of national attention to this. Essentially, the story goes that Brittany Maynard was a young woman. She was in her late 20s, early 30s. She had a severe brain cancer that was causing her, she couldn't sleep. She was seizing through the night. There was nothing anybody could have done. And California didn't have an option for this law. And so she packed her stuff up, moved up to get residency in Oregon. And, Oprah covered it, and all the big media kind of covered this process. And she documented her entire decision leading up to the moment. 1 in 5 Americans currently have access to end-of-life option care. Something else to mention is the typical patient is older. So you're thinking between 70 and 80 years old. The patient is, if you've ever had a loved one fighting cancer or in hospice, it's at the very end. It isn't at the moment where the doctor says, hey, there's 4 or 5 different chemotherapies that we can try, or it's after all that stuff. When the doctor says, this is the typical patient, when the doctor says, we can try something else, or they're offering out other options, but it's at the very, very end when that person is in hospice. And it's essentially the decision to have them on a PICC line and give them nutrition, or take them off a PICC line and they just wither away slowly. That is the typical patient who requests this prescription. This is an example of a couple of stories from New Jersey.
I am Lori Wilcox. I am 61 years old. I live in Clark, New Jersey. I'm a retired nurse. I've had the rheumatoid arthritis for 30 years, so it's invaded my lung tissue. My sister Melissa is also ill.
My name's Melissa Wilcox. I live in Hamilton Township, New Jersey. I'm 57 and I'm a retired disabled RN nurse. My diagnosis is small cell lung cancer. It's the most deadly of all lung cancers.
At the end stage of my disease, I do not want to suffer through air hunger in the very last days of my life.
Everyone I speak to actually supports me in support for aid in dying, including my doctors.
I've had 18 surgeries. I am definitely not giving up with my illness. I plan to fight my illness for as long as I can. I enjoy life. I like sitting on the beach. I like spending time training my dog. I love gardening. I love driving my little car.
People that would like to have this, the aid in dying past, are people that love life and want to live it to the fullest up to the last day that they can. I have two small grandchildren that I love to death. I don't want to die, but I'm going to. And I'd like to have the opportunity to do it my own way. I do want to die at home with my family and friends around me. I need the lawmakers to act right now because I may not have tomorrow.
One second. Are you guys still with me here?
We
Sorry.
are.
Okay, so I ended up just rebooting this presentation because it wouldn't let me go back, but you saw that video. These were the slides I lost here, but these were essentially the safeguards and the criteria. I'm going to send you a handout with this stuff as well. I'm just looking through here to make sure I didn't miss any of the important safeguards. Lethal injection is forbidden. Typical patient. Okay, so a little bit of the polling. We ran a poll going into last session. In February, right as the session was starting, and it came back 72% of Nevadans approved. Some of the other polling here, Gallup nationally is at 74. Up here in the north, KRNV actually did a Facebook poll, came back at 76. So essentially in here in Nevada, 3 out of 4 Nevada residents support medical aid in dying. Here's some of that breakdown. And it's important to know that those of us that work in this business, you can actually, you can do a push or a pull poll to get certain results, right? We could say things like when we're polling people that makes them, oh, I have to support this. But essentially what we wanted to do with this, we just asked the question straight up, exactly how the law is written. We said the legislature is considering a legislation that would allow a terminally ill adult with a prognosis of 6 months or less to live, suffering from an incurable illness, to obtain a doctor's prescription that they can voluntarily take at the end of their life. And it came back overwhelmingly supportive. If you go down the line here of how it breaks down, political party, religion, demographic is all in the high 60s, 70s, as high as 80s in support. This is that poll I was talking about that was done on Facebook. The reason I want to highlight this is because the way that KRNV proposed this, they used, it says Nevada to legalize physician-assisted suicide. That term We talk about euthanasia, Kevorkian, suicide, Compassion Choices, the organization that advocates, and Death with Dignity, another organization, they despise these terms because they're really harsh. It's just a different situation than an individual making this decision. And so I'm highlighting this because even with KRNV using these harsh terms to us as potential voters, should physician-assisted suicide be legal, even still the voters voted this on Facebook, 76%. And this was over 2,000 votes that they got. Some of the other online polls that I pulled screenshots from, high votes out of Nevada. This has over 50,000 votes, had it in at 82%. Doctors, important voice in this issue. We're seeing that doctors continue to, the support for this legislation continue to rise. It's at 62% right now. Religious supporters, the biggest opposition to this legislation is typically the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, not the parishioners. We've polled the parishioners, and parishioners support the legislation. It's really the leadership, the bishop structure, the leadership of the Catholic Church. At least that's the group that typically comes out and speaks in opposition. But just to kind of combat some of that, there's a lot of groups out here and a lot of folks that in religious groups that support the legislation. A few pictures of those folks. Dolores Huerta is a big advocate, and I'll send you this video. I don't want to play it because I think it'll disturb the rest of the presentation, but essentially what she's saying is she's a big advocate, and she wants us to support the legislation. Last thing I'll leave you with is we believe that this is a personal choice. So even if an individual has, morally they feel like they wouldn't vote as a legislator for this legislation, ultimately what that's saying is they're making a decision on behalf of somebody else's potential decision. So we're saying that it's a personal decision that only the individual can make. And that's why we believe the Nevada electorate overwhelmingly supports this legislation. Just real quick, Edgar Flores is our sponsor, senator over in the state Senate. These are the groups that have endorsed this legislation, from the Human Rights Commission to Battle-Born Progress, ACLU, the Nevada Libertarians, the Nevada Green Party, and it just goes down the line. A lot of the medical associations, the Nevada State Medical Association itself is neutral, and a lot of supporters. And that's the presentation. I don't want to take up too much time. I'll hand it over to Sarah, and I'll be around for any questions.
Thank you, Paul. I am going to take over the screen share so that Sarah can do hers. And I will switch it there. I'm sorry, I've been in and out of the room. It's been fun. All right. So, and all of these slides will be available after the presentation. So you'll have access to those. And Sarah, just hit the next button to do your presentation.
Okie dokie. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Adler, a longtime fan of your fellowship. Like I shouted out earlier, I'm a member of the Methodist Church in Carson City. If I were less lazy or we were closer, I'd be part of your congregation. I was a long time Presbyterian in Carson, and then they took a hard right turn, and I went across the street and thought, oh, I should have been in this congregation all along. And so the very first thing I did this morning was take fruit and orange juice over to our church, because we are the homeless shelter in Carson City for the month. We do night off the streets, and there are several churches. And so I got to say good morning to 31 people who were in our church last night. So pretty powerful on Martin Luther King's weekend, right? But we do what we can do. And so I am a lobbyist. I'm with the firm Silver State Government Relations, but what I'm sharing with you this morning, I'm doing entirely as a member of NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, Nevada. I have been very involved with NAMI. I was a founder of NAMI Western Nevada, and I do policy work as a volunteer for NAMI. So what we have coming is Senate Bill 68. And I'm going to describe in the next couple slides the revenue stream that it is going to create. But in terms of the process, like Paul just shared with you the whole screen of allies that he has supporting ILOA. I too have been working, sharing this with many, many stakeholders and allies, but I have been promised a hearing. So that is very exciting because part of the interplay in all of this work, much as people, hopefully you will see the need for this. Our new governor has said absolutely no new taxes. But at the same time, when we get into specific needs and opportunities, I'm hoping that we will overcome that. Now, if anyone happens to live in Senator Heidi Gansert's district, hello, Elliot. Because this being a revenue bill, it's what we call a 2/3 bill. You have to get not just a majority in each house, and then a majority at the legislative level, you have to get 2/3. And so it's a big lift. We're gonna need everybody's vote, including Senator Gansert's, hopefully. So this is an abbreviated presentation. What will this do? Right now, we have a real property transfer tax that you pay, and it goes to various places. One place it goes is to an affordable housing trust fund that's already established. What that does is create the state match for federal home dollars, some low-income assistance dollars. What we're proposing to do is add 20 cents to each $500 of sales value onto the real property transfer tax to create a critical needs fund for support, and that money will go into two buckets: one, supportive housing and services, the other into housing stability. So that would add $160 onto the cost of a $400,000 home. So why do we think that this is an appropriate way to do it? It is asking the people and the enterprises, so it'd be residential, commercial, industrial sales. Unfortunately, the casinos have a loophole on this, which someone in Considine is working on addressing. But we're asking people who can afford to buy property to contribute a little tiny bit of money to create a revenue stream that will be very significant in assisting people who need housing stability. And also because in terms of administrative simplicity, this mechanism for real property transfer tax going to affordable housing trust fund already exists. So that's the other reason that we think that this is really a net benefit to the state is that, as you are aware, there are very significant costs of homelessness, of treating mental illness, and of treating addiction, and those show up in law enforcement resources, in emergency 911 resources, in urgent care departments at our hospitals, and very sadly in our jails. The new sheriff, and the reason I'm hopeful, Governor Lombardo was the sheriff of Metro Clark County. The new sheriff, the thing he said on day one a few weeks ago when he took office was the solution to mental illness and addiction is not incarceration. Right. The solution is supportive housing. We can all get in this big tent. So who will these revenue streams serve? I have definitions in the bill of what supportive housing is, of who is eligible to receive supportive services. And that's basically, it's a long, significant description of persons with disabilities. But that would cover the homeless. SMI stands for severely mentally ill. That's my godson, Jamie. That's my like personal motivation for this. People in recovery from addiction. Right now, we have not enough, but many inpatient addiction treatment centers in Nevada. But you get 28 or 30 days. And if you return to the trailer in Aunt Betty's backyard or to the neighborhood where you came from, your opportunity to sustain in recovery is hugely diminished. So that's why we need supportive housing with the right kind of supports for people to sustain in their recovery and to return to the workforce. We need a workforce in Nevada. The other folks that this can serve over on the housing stability side are persons of very and extremely low income. Now, those terms are defined by HUD, and a very low income person is a person at 50% or less of area median income. Extremely low income, 30% or less of area median income. Nevada has the largest gap between the amount of housing, that subsidized housing available, and the number of people at 30% or less. And these are working people. These are seniors. These are veterans. So who's in the big tent and who am I reaching out to? We have in Nevada, led very much by PLAN, Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. I think Bob Fulkerson has been a member of your fellowship. PLAN is one of the lead nonprofits in creating what is called the Housing Justice Alliance. They have several tenants' rights bills coming. They're supporting this bill. Homeless advocates, public housing authorities you have the Reno Housing Authority here, excellent institution. I met with them a couple days ago. They're already working on supportive housing. I started crying. We have in Nevada regional behavioral health policy boards. They're a key partner in this. And I reached out on that. So I talked about it. Basically, these funds will go into two big buckets. Housing stability on one side, which will be in the form of rental assistance or home repair assistance. In rural Nevada, some of our very lowest income folks live in their own trailer, very old manufactured home on a quarter acre, and it needs assistance to sustain them in being a safe place for them to live. Over here on the supportive housing side, affordability means you only pay 30% of your income. Well, my godson's income is $866 a month. 30% of that, $300, does not pay the rent in terms of the utilities, the cost of operating that property. So we need rental assistance to make these supportive housing projects pencil, as we call it. And we also need funds for supportive services. Now, the beauty of creating Nevada-based dollars is that there are folks, there's a lot of HUD dollars out there and house vouchers and that sort of thing, but there are people who fall through the cracks. For example, if you've been previously incarcerated and you're now out of prison, you have to wait 3 years before you're eligible for a HUD voucher. So where are these folks going? Well, they try and get reemployed, right? So there are real gaps that we can fill. We're going to amend it so that a use of funds will be acquisition rehab. So you think of, well, I'll show you. The Empowerment Center. Put your hand up if you know what the Empowerment Center is. They took on South Virginia, on the left-hand side of the screen, a disused motel, and they transformed it into supportive housing. And they're so good at this. And it is for women in recovery from addiction, some of whom have been closely involved with the justice system. And Empowerment Center has done such a good job. They have now built Marble Way apartments where they continue to provide a lesser degree of support, but it's sober housing, it's the kind of support people need. And I said, Yvette, how do you fund this? And she said, with prayers and with grants. And what we need to do, what SB 68 will do, is create a reliable revenue stream so that we develop a supportive housing community throughout our state. So That's what it is, that's what it does, it's customizable, urban and rural, we have 5 regional behavioral health boards. So the boards will decide, I'm in rural Nevada, there is no supportive housing, most of this money should just go to straight out housing stability, the subsidy of extremely low income people. I'm in Clark, I'm in Washoe. Washoe County got bricks and mortar dollars from Home Means Nevada to build supportive housing, but they don't have the money, they don't have all the money they need for the rent and the services. So that's SB 68, and now turn it back to Boss Leah and Boss Charlotte.
I think she is very much the boss today. Thank you for that. So we have just seen 3 bill presentations, one of which has an actual bill number. Paul, I think yours is still in development. It has a BDR number. And Elliot, do you have a BDR number? So we have 2 BDR numbers. The language will be coming, like I said, after February 6th. I know this has been a lot of information in a very condensed amount of time. We do have 10 minutes left for questions and discussion. Where would anyone like to start? I do see one in the chat from Penny, who I think this is for you, Paul. She says, I'm confused about status in Nevada and California for current option for right to die. Why do we need the bill?
And Penny lives in California.
Yeah.
Okay, so medical aid in California has since legalized this bill since I mentioned that story about Brittany Maynard. That was years ago. Not only have they passed the bill in California, but they continue to make it more accessible. Nevada does not have the bill at all. So essentially, if you're a Nevada resident and you want to use the prescription, you would have to move to California, establish residency, and it's a big inconvenience. You'd rather be in your home with surrounded by your family members as opposed to packing a bag and going off to some strange place. I hope that answers it.
Thank you, Paul. Other questions, either in the audience or online? And just so folks in the room know, we do have 21 participants online. So between the 2, I think we have a good crowd. Yeah.
What are those bill draft numbers, Elliot and Paul? Do you have those?
No, I can look mine up.
Paul, do you have your BDR number handy? And that number will change when it's assigned an actual bill number, but if you're looking on the BDR list right now, that's how you can find it. And if you do end up doing the bill tracking software and you start tracking that BDR through Nellis, when it turns into a bill, you'll get a notification, you'll get the bill number, you'll know the committee it's going to. So it is handy to have that.
The BDR file number for End of Life Options Act is 677 by Senator Edgar Flores.
And then mine is 639 by Assemblywoman Angie Taylor.
Oh, fantastic. Angie Taylor is up here in Washoe County, so it's possible she's the representative of some folks here in the room.
She's mine.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, we got really well.
I did have some, I didn't go too in depth on my slides, but I did want to let folks know that there are deadlines in the Nevada legislature. They're typically held to until the end, and then they start waiving rules. So some of that can get a little confusing, and that's part of the reason I suggested a UUFN subcommittee to talk about these things, just so you can get really into the weeds on the details, and we can start talking strategy for next session and what can be done in 2023, and just the folks who want to be kept in the loop on what's happening now. I'm always around, although during legislative session, it's harder to catch me.
Does anyone have suggestions for us on stakeholders or constituencies or approaches we should use to promote our bills?
Yeah, actually, I think that's a really good point to bring up too. Actually, just kind of dovetail really fast of how important it is, as Leah was talking about kind of establishing a committee and having people just be present in the session. I guarantee that if somebody is there every day in a committee, wearing a specific shirt or sweater, as you were mentioning, the legislators will take notice of that and they will come and ask you about it. And that does really open up a lot of opportunity for access. Everything about the legislative process is basically relationship building and helping others impart knowledge, right? That's what our job is we bring knowledge about a specific issue to legislators and to you. And so you can do that as well. And as we were talking, it's a constitutional right. More people should be involved in our system. That makes better policy and that makes better government that works for everybody.
Yeah, so I know we're getting organized here with our group, but I think one of the things we ought to do is take a survey of our members and find out who they know and how well they know them. As we talked about relationships, I think that really goes a long way. So I think that's something that we need to do.
Well, and kind of, sorry to expand on that a little bit, you probably have everybody's address. And so you can find out every single member's district and who represents them. And so it's even more impactful, especially going from the north. The north has this really weird sense of power. Because, no, seriously,
Bill Raggio?
Heidi Gantzer, right, is a Senate minority leader. And we're talking about revenue bills. It can't pass. She's probably more powerful than the governor at this point because of what it'll take to get these bills passed. And so we actually in Northern Nevada have a little bit of an outweighed sense of power in this process. The South has more legislators, but ours are more active in our community and we have more access to them. And they sit on important committees. So putting together a list and then making sure everybody knows who represents them will also help you with that.
And our last legislative session, we did Zoom meetings with legislators.
Great.
Making sure we had people in their district on the community. So to continue that, I presume.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
We haven't heard yet what the rules will be as far as Zoom access. I'm imagining for personal meetings, legislators will still maintain Zoom access. Committee meetings, it's been requested that they continue to have that virtual access option for, folks who can't drive or folks who are immunocompromised, people who can't find childcare. It's an option, but it did kind of slow the process and I think make it a little more difficult for legislators. Not necessarily a bad thing. Sorry, letting legislators who are listening.
Especially freshman legislators who didn't know anything else.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
This may be too obvious, who you may be overdoing it, but that probably would be to have a page on the UUFN website that provides updated information regarding the particularly important bills that are of interest to the fellowship.
Which takes someone to do.
I was gonna say, do we volunteer a committee there and a committee chair and a newsletter writer?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I think, how are we on time? We have 3 minutes left. Oh, yeah.
Any more Zoom questions?
So there was a question. Oh, good call,
Sorry, I
Elliot.
just didn't want to call out anybody from there.
Thank you. What measures will be in place to monitor the spending of money designated for supportive housing
Great.
to avoid waste or corruption and that the money is spent as intended?
You can
Thank
say-
you.
You can say right there. And
That's a great question, and there will be a competitive grants process to allocate funding to who delivers supportive services and who is operating the supportive housing. There will be 3-year grants because it is ridiculous to have to renew a grant every year, but every year there will be a performance audit. So if you are not succeeding in delivering the services that you committed to deliver, then your money can be withdrawn. And actually, because in order to get the bricks and mortar funded, they have to show that there's a 15-year commitment to operating budgets and services. that 3-year grant, as long as you are successful, can be renewed 3 times. So unfortunately, it's very expensive to do this work, but what we believe is when we intervene in these cycles of homelessness and addiction and mental illness, Nevada will see, oh my gosh, I don't have the same number of people downtown deterring tourists. I have more people in the workforce. This is really an investment that we should continue and expand. But yeah, there will be performance audits. The Nevada Housing Division and the Department of Health and Human Services will be doing the quality assurance.
Thanks, Penny. And all of our contact information, emails and such are included in the presentation that we can send out to the forum list. So you can review this presentation, all the slides that were included. You can email all of us. I think Bobby's love talking to people. We are pretty much open to anybody emailing, calling, texting. I see Paul laughing there. He knows it. We're all here to talk on a Sunday. So thank you all, and thank you to Paul and Sarah and Elliot for being willing to come and chat with us.
Thanks for the
on a Sunday.
opportunity.
Thanks for
Yes.
Really-
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm off to my granddaughters. I'd like to stay for the rest of the day, but Sunday is my day with the girls.
So now you know what you have to do.
Yeah.